This is Carrie Johnson with the Iowa Department of Management, and this is part 3 of a 6-part system that provides an overview of the Department of Management's valuation system for submission of 2023 property values by the county auditor or staff. And this particular segment, part 3, is going to talk about just the kind of data that is submitted to the system. So you will be importing a data file. It's a .dat file that your local software creates. And if you don't want to override the district names in the state system, make sure your system places an X for the taxing district name. And this is a sort of a brief look at the data that's actually imported to Department of Management. It's each and every tax district and information about that tax district, what type of tax district it is, the name, the 100% and taxable value by class, exemptions, etc. So a variety of different pieces of information for each and every tax district. So we'll walk through the actual fields of data that are imported. Again, you are importing both 100% and taxable values. The system does not calculate for you those tax district taxable values. Those are calculated within your software and provided as part of the upload. Keep in mind too that negative numbers or produced negative numbers are not permitted. And those would be sort of flags that the system would catch and prevent you from uploading your data if you had negative values. The first column of data is 100% value and then taxable value. And then taxable value, of course, is the amount calculated after application of the statutory assessment limitation as determined by the Iowa Department of Revenue. And those figures have been provided for the 2023 assessment year. Valuations for gas and electric utilities pay a replacement tax. Actually, they are not subject to statutory assessment limitation factors. But when you get that data from Department of Revenue, you will see both 100% or assessed value and taxable value for those properties. So, as I mentioned, rollback is available for 2023. And when we talk about 2023 assessment year, of course, that is for the fiscal year 2024-25. And the following classes of property are subject to taxation at less than 100% of value. So ag property, so this would be your ag land and buildings, is to be taxed at 71.8370. And residential property is to be taxed at 46.3428. And then when we talk about some of the other classes of property, commercial, industrial, and railroad property is actually subject to a 2-tier assessment limitation. So for the first $150,000 of value of each property unit, they would receive a percentage of 46.3428, which is, again, that's just what residential was, right? And then anything above that $150,000 is subject to a rollback of 90%. So that's for commercial, industrial, and railroad property. And then the other class of property, that utility value, is 100%. So it's not receiving an assessment limitation this year. Okay, so if we look at our tax district information, we want, of course, define that tax district by kind of what it is, right? So the first thing we look at is property type, rural or urban. You know, is it urban within a city or rural outside a city? If it's a city tax district, then is it city ag? Yes or no? So if it's a city ag district, then that means it's subject to 384.1 of the Code of Iowa. So it's ag land within a city, and it receives a special tax rate of $3.00375. So it is not taxed at the regular city rate, whatever they determine that to be. It gets that special $3 rate. So it has to be in its own tax district. City exempt, yes or no, and then city exempt situations are used when the city agrees to a transition for the imposition of city taxes against property within an annexed area. So there's an annexation and property is being brought in, but they're being brought in to the full city rate sort of incrementally. And if you're curious about city exempt and you have to deal with that for the first time, you can certainly contact me and I'll help walk you through it. Schools only. Now, this is new as far as viewing it for 2023. It was put in place by House File 718, so some legislation that passed in the 2023 General Assembly. But we're not really going to be using it this year in 2023. You will see it, but it doesn't really come into play for a couple assessment years. So schools only is all going to be a no for assessment year 2023. Your system is going to populate a no in that field. It will not be used until 2025, if applicable in your county. If it was a yes, it would be flagging a tax district that contains value exempt from taxation, exempt from all taxation except the school levy rate. So I'll talk about it in a little bit more detail, but just be aware you're going to see in your file schools only and an N, and that's really all you need to know for assessment year 2023. TIF, yes or no? Of course, a yes would indicate that the taxing district is either a base or increment. So TIF type is either base, increment, or N. So it's not a TIF district. Um, so if it's a B, then it's a TIF base. If it's an I, it's a TIF increment. Frozen base year. So for your base districts, we need to see a 4-digit number that is the frozen base year essentially. If it's not yet been established, you can enter zeros for that, but of course remember to go back and update that once the frozen base year has been established. Frozen base amount. So for those base districts, you'd want to make sure to enter the 100% frozen base year valuation assigned to the district. For TIF type I taxing districts, you're going to list the associated base taxing district number because base and increment districts always go in pairs and they're associated with each other. It is very important that the associated base district number is correct, or certain reports will not be accurate. And of course, never try to associate a base district with more than one increment district or vice versa. Receiving TIF type. For TIF for the increment district, we're going to say, what's the type of entity that is actually doing this TIF, right? Is it a city urban renewal? Is it a county urban renewal? Is it a rural improvement zone? And for whatever one it is, there's going to be a letter associated. And receiving levy authority code, again, for those increment tax districts, that's the levy authority code for the TIF authority that did this TIF, and that's going to be receiving the TIF money. Okay, so we talked about, what the tax district itself, like how it's defined and the different labels that could go with a district itself. As far as the figures, data that are reported into the system, again, it's value by class. Line 1 is that residential property. So if there's dwellings on ag property, they must be classified as residential and listed on line 1. And they get the residential rollback. Okay, and residences on ag land within a city, also line 1 in a regular city taxing district. They're residential value. They're not ag value, even if they're on, in an ag area. They're still residential properties and are taxed as residential. Line 2 and 3 are the ag land and ag buildings. And again, the only classifications that should appear for these tax districts within a city are ag land, and you will see an error if you try to list any other type of class on that land. It's only ag land and ag buildings that are not residences. Lines 4 and 5 are commercial and industrial. Line 6 used to be multi-residential, but starting with last assessment year, it was moved back to reserved. And anything that had been multi-residential is now reported as part of the residential class. So beginning with the last assessment year that we talked about, 2022, it is reserved again. So just sort of waiting for future property class additions, just like line 7 is reserved. Line 8 is railroads. And so that's your railroad value that's submitted to you by Department of Revenue. Utilities without gas and electric. So this would be those utilities that are subject to local property tax and certified to you by Department of Revenue. There's not a lot that's included here, but those would be communicated to you by Department of Revenue. Gas and electric value is not included here, and neither are railroads. Other line 10, that's pretty infrequently used, but it could be. I mean, the most common thing that I see are some of our border counties with like railroad bridges, toll bridges, that sort of thing. Gross valuation without gas and electric, of course, this is just the sum of the lines above it. Line 12 is military exemptions. Again, negative numbers are not permitted. And then we have homestead exemptions. So these are new. Again, negative numbers are not permitted for these new homestead exemptions. You report both types of exemptions in both the taxable and 100% columns. Please note, Department of Revenue has clarified the order of application for those exemptions and credits. If you have any questions about the order of applications, please review their memo. They have it posted on their website, and I list the location here, and that can clarify for you any questions you have on what's applied first to a particular parcel. Keep in mind, in these reports that you see in Department of Management, our military exemptions and homestead exemptions are simply a sum of everything that's going on in the tax district. So the fact that homestead is listed after military is just a function of it being new. It doesn't mean that that's what happens first, if that makes sense. So please know, if you have questions about the application, the order of application for exemptions and credits, Department of Revenue fleshed that out really nicely in a memo that you can review on their website. And then, of course, total net values is just the net value. So it's the gross value minus exemptions. The next line we see, of course, is gas and electric value, and that's certified to you by Department of Revenue. And this is not, other utility value. This is only gas and electric. That's all that's going to be entered here. You place the assessed value in the 100% column and taxable in the taxable. The difference between the two is not due to a rollback adjustment. It's just a function of how they're calculated. And it is possible for taxable valuations to be higher than 100%. So just kind of keep that in mind. Line 16 is open spaces land. And line 17 is the number of homestead credit claims. So that's sort of an overview of what you're sending in, right? So let's talk real quickly about how you actually import it. So you're going to get from your system, from your software, a .dat file, and you're going to have that saved off onto your desktop or somewhere in your system where you can find it. You'll log into our system, and you're going to go to choose the file and upload. So you're going to browse to locate that DAT file. In this case, we've got one from Clinton. You're going to choose it. It's going to show here, and then you're going to select upload. So it's going to do some validations to make sure you're not submitting an incorrect year or there's problems with your data, it's going to do some validations. If you get the green check mark, then you know that it met those initial uh, checks, and you can go ahead and confirm and upload the data. Data updated successfully. So it's pulled your data and it's uploading it into the system. Now, one really important thing to remember, by it, meeting that first step and being able to be uploaded, that does not mean that there's no errors and your data is great and we've checked it for every, possible error that there could be. All it is doing is validating your data. It's looking for common, data errors that it could find. That doesn't mean your data is correct. We are not able to know whether or not every single field of data that you're uploading is an accurate number. So I just want to kind of confirm that with folks, but it is doing some validation on the file itself. Some common errors with the upload are a taxing district that was switched in your software from, say, rural to urban. A taxing district switched from a TIF base to a TIF increment or vice versa. And then the most common one probably is if you created a tax district in your local software or you deleted it in your local software, but you haven't made the same change in the valuation side of our system. So your file is going to say, well, we have tax district 123, and our system is going to say, I don't show any tax district 123, and so it's going to invalidate your data. So again, this is sort of just an example here, and it's telling you the following tax district has not been set up in the application. You've got to do that first before you try to import. And in this example, it says there's two taxing districts that have changes to the property type. So this one, you have these taxing districts, and in our system, they were listed as a property type urban, but when you uploaded it in your file, you have it as property type rural. Well, that's a problem. That doesn't match, right? So it's not going to allow you to upload. And these similar, another issue. So this is city ag land. Your file says it is yes for city ag land, but in our system, these taxing districts are no for city ag land. So you can't change it. Like, what happened there? Just some examples of some things that can happen. So if you are uploading your data and you're seeing errors, certainly contact me. You can take a screenshot of the errors that you're seeing, and I can take a look at those for you. A lot of times I can even, try the upload of your file myself and see the errors that way. But keep in mind, basically, if you're trying to upload the data and it won't go, it's because there's something is not agreeing. So our system is either missing data that you've added locally, or it has data still that you've deleted locally, or you've switched something from the prior year that is not a switch that's allowed. So some of the common issues that we can run into. Or another one, you've got some negative numbers or something along those lines, and that can happen as well. But if you have questions, feel free to contact me. And again, I can be reached by phone or by email. Thanks.